So here I'm going to go over as a review how to add a splash screen to your game. So right now the way my game is set up is everything is on only one frame, right? So there's no real timeline here. All my action script is in this one space right here, and all the animation, of course, is within the movie clip for my character. Now, when I hit Control Enter, the character comes up, and I can move him. All my game works right now, right? So step one is we need to move this stuff to frame 2 because the splash screen will come up on frame 1. Frame 1 is the first thing that will come up. There's pretty much no getting around it. If you try to skip to somewhere else, it's going to, you're going to see that first and it's going to be complicated. So I'm just going to select these 2 frames right here and then I'm just going to drag them to frame 2. Real simple. And what that does is that you can see these circles right here. I'll make these bigger. There we go. That means there's keyframes each place, which means each frame can be different. So, and I'm going to make a new layer actually too, F6, because I'm going to make this layer here my action script, and then this layer here is going to be my background, which I think means actually I'm going to hit Shift F6 to convert that to a regular frame, right? So that square just means it's the end of where this keyframe is. So this layer will be the same throughout both frames. This one will be different because we will have different action scripting, and these 2 will also be different. This one will hold buttons and this one will simply hold a flag. To review, in order to put a flag on something, we select the frame in the timeline, and I go to Properties, and I'm going to call this Begin, because that's the flag my code's going to look for when I press my button and it goes to the next frame. So in order to do my background, I'm going to cheat because I already did it once, and I'm just going to grab both pieces from the finished version. Just kidding. There we go. Stick them right there. Alright, and then I'm going to do the same with the button. Now I'm going to put that on this top layer right here because I don't want it to be on both sections, right? I want the background to be there when my character shows up, but I don't want the button to be there. Replace existing items. There we go. Alright, so I think it's auto-saving right now. Okay, so I bring the button in. It already has an instance name because I brought it in from another document, but you guys will have to make sure you select this button and call it something. If you call it enter underscore button, it will match the code. And remember that the name of the instance, this particular instance of the button, is different than the name of it here, right? Any time you bring in a new version of this here, right? So I bring it here, it's not going to have an instance name. This instance name is what the code calls up. It doesn't look at the library name, right? It looks at the name of that particular instance. All right. So we've got our button, we've got our background, and so now we need a little bit of code, which is in the doc file I gave you guys. So I'm going to copy and paste the bulk of it right here, and then explain it. So this code, whoops, right, is going to go on the first frame, not here where the bulk of your code is for the game. It's going to go on this first frame right here where we see the button. And I've got it on a separate layer just to keep it, easy to follow. So I'm just going to paste it right there. And just to go over real quick what this means. The stop is so that we don't go through the timeline, right? Like if you don't have a stop function here, this doesn't mean stop reading the code. It means stop this, right? So we don't go from one frame to the other just right away. Excuse me. Then we have an event listener, and it's added to the button. Before we were adding them to the whole stage. This is adding it just to the button, right? And we're saying it's a mouse click, and we're calling it enter click. That's just the function I've named it. You can name it whatever you want as long as it's the same name right here. And then we define the function for enter click as go to and play quote unquote begin. Begin being what we labeled our frame right here, right? So, real simple little piece of code. So I'm going to test this, right? Make sure it works. I'm going to Control Enter, and then, all right, so I know it's recognizing this button as a button and not, the whole screen, which is good. So I click Enter, and I get my character, and I'm pressing on keys, and it's not working. So what's going on? Well, this is something I mentioned in class. One thing to troubleshoot in Flash is to, if something's not working, click on the stage and then see if it still isn't working. And in this case, suddenly it works. That's a different problem than if you click on the stage and it still won't recognize the keyboard strokes. What this is a case of one little missing piece of code that we can get away with when all of this code right here was on frame 1. Now that it's on frame 2, we can't get away with the bad writing anymore. And the reason for that is Flash considers frame 1 sort of very distinct and different from all other frames. Alright, so there's a piece of code in that doc file. Nice little short bit. Stage.focus equals stage. It's code for saying pay attention to the stage, right? The focus is the whole stage, and not any one thing in particular. So I'm just going to copy that. And where this goes is in your main code. Towards the bottom, right, we've got this section here at the bottom under the game loop right here. So enter frame game loop. This is telling Flash how to cycle through the whole game. And that bit about stage focus goes right at the top of the function for the game loop, right? So if these are sort of the overall parameters, this is one of those parameters. So I've got to stick that right there. In my case, it's around line 150. That depends on how many enters you've added. But it's very close to the bottom. It's within this last section right here. Here's the end of my code. All right, and now if I test it, click Enter, and the game should work right off the bat. All right, so that is how you add a splash page. You should end up with 2 different frames, right? Frame 1 and frame 2. And in my case, I have 3 different layers. I'm going to call this buttons, actually. There we go. So that layer has my buttons, this layer has my action script, and this layer has my background.